Discretion is advised. And now, America's most exciting radio talk show, The Savage Nation. And here he is, Michael Savage. You're listening to an encore segment of The Savage Nation.
Hey, happy Thanksgiving, everyone. This is Michael Savage. Today is one of my favorite days of the year, and I'm going to play some of my favorite stories about family and some of the other greatest hits from the Savage Nation. I want to start with a story in my new book, Train Tracks, which is perfect reading for the holidays. Amherst, New York. Deanna, welcome. Is it Deanna or Diana?
It's Diana.
It's like that. Hold me, squeeze me, Diana. Okay, it's Diana.
Yeah, it's like Lady Diana. First of all, you sent me that book, Train Tracks. I called the other day, and I wanted to tell you, The Speculator in a Garden of Numbers, that is a genius chapter. It's just genius. I keep reading the same pages over.
People don't realize that I began in literature as a poet, as a story writer, and I was a scientist for many years with a real PhD, and I've been a talk show host for 18 years. I've had many incarnations. But that story that you just mentioned, The Speculator in a Garden of Numbers, is actually a minor American masterpiece. It's about a time that I tried to become a speculator in cocoa stocks, and I thought I was making a fortune when I lost every penny I had. And it's what I went through as a poor young guy who had some money and started to speculate and got ripped off by a commodities broker who steered me wrong. But I mean, it was an amazing story, and it's really up and down.
Absolutely riveting. I wanted to tell you thank you. I don't know how many people ever call and just thank you for something you sent them, but I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you very much. Hold me, save me, Diana. That is a good story for now, The Speculator in a Garden of Numbers. I don't know if I'm going to read it now. Yeah, I'm going to read a piece of it. It's from my book, Train Tracks. I'm going to read one or two paragraphs. He was not of a wealthy family. His father, a small shopkeeper now dead, had managed to rectify his penniless immigrant childhood position, but never managed to attain what was known as a comfortable status. The son was warned about investments at an early age. On one of their many summer rides in the Catskill Mountains, they both watched a raceway being dozed and carved out of a distant cornfield. The small father lectured the smaller boy. Sure, they move a little earth around, get you to invest in their scheme, and after they've milked the public for all they can, they declare bankruptcy. They can keep their racetrack. The small boy believed his father's every word. He worshipped the forceful, handsome man for his ability to say loudly what he felt, not just within the confines of the household, but outside as well. The man knew what he was talking about and told you so. Well, the raceway was slowly but certainly constructed and eventually operated very successfully. Those who had purchased shares in the embryonic Raceway Corporation were rewarded for their faith with substantial capital gains. The son never mentioned the completed track to his father, though they would pass it each summer over the years. There would be no point in proving his father wrong. He was right about too many other things for this error to have any impact on their relationship. As the little boy became a man, his father grew neither more rich nor more poor. His income remained the same throughout the years, rising just slightly with inflation. The small family home was always secure. The children had enough money to attend the municipal college, and the two parents with simple wants were able to go away every summer to a bungalow in the mountains. The family dry goods shop was managed with honesty and without credit, and provided a moderate but secure income. The father would justify his moderate position from time to time. As one friend or another would move to a more expensive home, take a cruise, or purchase something truly showy, he would lecture the boy, his daughter, and his wife about his friend's foolishness. He simply did not believe in the American dream. He smelled a fraud, but was unable to prove his suspicions until many years later. One of his friends, a corpulent man he had grown up with on the Lower East Side, went bankrupt. The journey back from his expensive home out on the island to one room in a poor relations apartment with his 3 children took less than 1 year. It seems that women no longer knitted as they did during and after the Second War. The little man's children were pulled out of school to earn their food, while the once prosperous yarn merchant became a clerk in a competitor's shop. Sadly, the boy's father took pleasure in his friend's plight. I told you he was overextending himself. All the years he came in here and shot his mouth off. Look where it got him. All the time borrowing from Peter to pay Paul. I knew all along it was no good. The bankruptcy of the yawn man served to shore up the position of the dry goods man against investments and credit borrowing. The boy learned to respect his father's position even more firmly through this lesson in reality. Another of his father's successful friends came to ruin in a different way. His daughter died from an overdose of heroin in an infamous New York hotel frequented by unsuccessful artists. Once again, the man's moderate approach to life seemed to be the right one. Though his children would not distinguish themselves in any great way, they would not bring shame to the family either. As time would have it, the dry goods man died in middle age of a second heart attack. The boy named Sam, now a shaky man of 31, had on his own managed to accrue what would have been a small fortune to his father. The capital was not exactly earned illegally, but it could not be said that the money had been earned from legal endeavors either. It seems that taxes were not paid on income derived from a bookstore that drew substantial profits by selling books purchased from illegitimate sources. The young man managed to save between $80,000 and $90,000 in a little more than 3 years. The cash sat in a safe cemented in the basement floor of Sam's mother's house. The young merchant let it sit there without making any investments. He distrusted Wall Street as a result of his father's indoctrination over the years and never learned much about any other financial opportunities available to the small investor either. However, Sam always heard that real estate was good, a nice, safe way to build a fortune. But each time Sam would make an offer to purchase a small parcel of land, the deal would not be consummated. He would make an unrealistically low offer, which would be rejected. On receiving back his deposit, he would feel as though he had somehow made money simply because he had not lost any. It's pretty good. You know, I'm reading this to myself right now on the radio show. This is the Savage Nation from my short story collection, Train Tracks. And you know what it reads like? It reads to me almost like a Chinese short story. If this was written by an author from China about a family in China, the Chinese would love this story. It should be translated into the Chinese. Anyway, let me go on, and I'm going to stop in a minute because I'll show you where it's going, and then I'll stop and you'll read the book yourself. The 5 or 6 parcels he failed to buy increased 2 or 3 times in value over the 3 years he kept track of their prices. This confirmed Sam's appraisal of his business sense. He thought he was a shrewd buyer but lacked the faith necessary to put his money into an investment. After 3 years of testing himself, he was ripe for making a dramatic move. He would no longer wait around to die like his father, while enormous profits could be realized by signing his name to a few slips of paper. Sam was an avid reader. He not only sold books, but inherited that love for the written word that was woven throughout the fabric of his people. He had just read a small book about useful plants of the world and was convinced that coffee and cocoa were highly underpriced products of the soil. Cocoa, he thought, is an agricultural product with good associations. Coffee and cocoa were both grown only in the tropics. Through an acquaintance in the shop, Sam learned of the commodity exchanges, where products of every kind were bought and sold by both those who utilized the products and those who merely speculated or invested on the rise or fall of prices. By making a few phone calls, he learned the name of a commodity man at the largest brokerage house in the city. After a few cordial conversations with the broker, during which he learned the rudiments of speculating in cocoa, Sam the speculator was anxious to cash in on his hunch. The broker told him that a minimum amount of $5,000 would be required. Anxious as the young man was, he did not rush over with the money. For several days, he just phoned the broker to get the opening and closing prices and ask a few new questions. Finally, the broker pushed him a little. He suggested that the market appeared ready to rise and told Sam to get his deposit in an account. That evening, the speculator decided to go to the safe and withdraw $5,000 cash. In the morning, he failed to open the bookstore for the first time in 3 years. Instead, the cash was converted into traveler's checks in 6 separate banks. Sam thought this would throw the tax people off should they be following his cash flow. He also did not want to alarm the broker. The exchange at each bank went well, with the exception of the 4th transaction, where the teller asked Sam why the money had such a peculiar smell. He acted dumb, muttering something about a trip to Spain, while remembering that the years in the safe had probably caused his dough to mildew. Leaving the bank, he was sure the dumb clerk would report the incident to her superior. He only hoped the supervisor would become used to mildewed bills in this time of inflation, when many people were removing their stashes from little corners of the world. You know, it's interesting. I wrote this 30 years ago, and it's kind of more current today than it was in the 1960s or 70s, I think, when I wrote this. It's good writing. I like it. If I like it, you like it. If I like it, it's good writing. So anyway, I'm going to read one more page from The Speculator, from Train Tracks. Then we'll go back to normal programming, which is always abnormal. And I'll go on now from Train Tracks. After the final transaction of traveler's checks into the cashier's check, A brief subway ride took him to the center of world finance. Following a few directionless meanderings, he found the brokerage house. It occupied an entire city block, was of brown glass and steel, and rose higher than any other building in the district. The young man felt better about his decision when he surveyed the magnitude of the structure. New thoughts came pouring from his brain. So that's how such buildings come to be, he was thinking. Men buy and sell and buy all over the world, and this company takes a commission whether the investors make or lose. Either way, the brokerage houses profit, he thought. He was amused by the cleverness of the scheme, but still felt positive about his decision to, quote, get into it, as he weaved his way through a maze of people in the lobby who were glued to changing stock prices flashing above their heads. At once, he no longer sneered at these people. He understood them. He was part of them for the first time. Those phony artist friends of his would not need to know about his new attitude towards them. It would be sufficient that at last he was part of reality. Once on the 27th floor, he found his way to the commodity broker. They both acted intimate with one another, as though through the telephone conversations they had discovered they were brothers, and were now at last meeting for the first time since their separation at an orphanage. For a while, they both just sat and watched the gigantic board where prices for wheat, corn, soybeans, live cattle, hog bellies, coffee, cocoa, silver, platinum, and other items clicked and changed with mechanical excitement. Sam noticed that the broker was not alone before the big board. He was one of a dozen or so brokers in the large and well-designed room. As the young man casually glanced at the other faces, the cigarette-stained fingers of this very thin broker tapped nervously on his desk. The thin man whispered, "You see that man in the back at the last desk? He earned over $1 million last year just in trading cocoa." The young man was impressed but not astonished. He knew people made that kind of money, and here was one of them in the flesh. That the $1 million earner did not look different from anybody else made him all the more believable. As the young man imagined what the rich man's home and wife looked like, the kind of dinners prepared for them by their cook, and the manner in which they entertained themselves, he asked the broker almost in a whisper, "He makes that much just from speculating in cocoa?" The thin, nervous broker educated him. No. We are not allowed to speculate for our own accounts. He makes that on commissions alone. He is the man who handles the Hershey account. He buys and sells all their cocoa for them. So that's how they get their chocolate. Sam felt much more involved with the real world than ever before. He realized that soon he would be participating in the buying and selling of chocolate, just as this international corporation did from right there in that office, simply by having his broker watch the changing figures. He gave the check to his broker and watched him walk with it to an accounting office at the far end of the room and placed it in a pneumatic tube. Jim, the broker, returned and said, "It's done. Down the tubes by now. Your account number is 0137. The young man was made a bit nervous by the broker's choice of words, but he immediately realized the expression, "down the tubes," probably originated in such investment houses to describe the passage of messages, checks, through pneumatic tubes which traversed the building. He further reassured himself by repeating the many names of the partners of the famous company. I'll pause right now. It's about 30 pages more. The Speculator in a Garden of Numbers from my masterpiece Train Tracks. You're listening to the Savage Nation. I'll be right back.
Savage.